It's a very fun energy, I would say, but then also like a reflective time, and sort of like I feel like I'm walking over a bridge because it's like the bridge is like on one side it's like my childhood, and then on the other side it's like the adulthood or the next chapter that I'm walking into. So I think there's something almost beautiful about that because I can look back and say, wow, I had such a great childhood.
She's a graduating senior and she's headed to Columbia University. And she carries one of the most recognizable names in American history. But what you're about to hear is not about that name, it's about her. I'm Esther Dillard. This is The Color Between the Lines. And today, Yolanda Renee King, the only granddaughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, talks about what it means to step into the next chapter of your life when the world is watching. She breaks down what a Black Cotillion really is, why it matters, and what happened when she sat down to read her grandfather's first book and found that it changed something in her that she was not expecting. Are you sure where you're going to go for college?
Well, I am going to Columbia.
Wow.
Yes.
Why Columbia? Just curious.
Well, obviously the education is top tier, but then also I just really, I mean, out of all the campuses that I toured, and I think maybe I'm a little biased, but I think it's like the prettiest campus I've seen. And I think that also, as well, just kind of, I think it is like what I'm looking for. One of the biggest things that attracted me there was like they have a human rights major, and that was like one of the, I mean, I remember touring it and I was like, oh, that's like a major. And so that was like one of the things because like I never even like knew that that existed beforehand. So
Yeah.
I think that was like one of the biggest things that reeled me in.
This is your senior year. You're going to go for your prom and graduation and all these college decisions, a lot of things that young people are really feeling pressure about, during this time of year. And they're really uncertain about what's going on in the world. What has this time been like for you, having to deal with all those decisions and what's happening in the world now?
Well, I think that for me, it's been the best way I would describe it is bittersweet, because I do feel like it is time. And maybe also, I think, especially now, I feel like it's time because I go into my school building and I'm like the oldest grade there, which is like so surreal to me, especially because I think having like friends who are in, I guess, are they even in grades anymore being in college, but who are now in college and some who are even like out of college, it's really it's different to be like the oldest grade and to have no one left. And I'm like, well, everybody else is on the other side. And so it's kind of like, I know that it is almost time. But then also, I think having this also this kind of sadness as well, because I am so lucky to say that I had such a great childhood that it will be definitely, most definitely an adjustment for me to be becoming or going into adulthood, which is something that I've always wanted to do and something that I've been very excited about. But then also, I guess I wish that I would have listened to the adults more who were like, oh, you should enjoy being a child. And I was like, I always thought to myself, oh, no, I want to be an adult. Um, so I think just like learning to enjoy the moment is what this year has taught me, and being a senior as I go off. Obviously, it's very exciting. I'm very excited, and my parents and everybody around me. It's a very fun energy, I would say, but then also like a reflective time, and sort of like I feel like I'm walking over a bridge because it's like the bridge is like on one side it's like my childhood, and then on the other side it's like the adulthood or the next chapter that I'm walking into. So I think there's something almost beautiful about that because I can look back and say, wow, I had such a great childhood. And I think though it's normal for us to kind of miss that because it's routine. And I think that this next chapter will be just such a big change in my routine.
How will you introduce yourself?
Well, I think that usually when I introduce myself to people, I usually will just introduce myself as Yolanda, especially if I guess we're not in a setting or in an environment that like, where people might know or where we're doing something, an event based off of my grandfather, for instance, but like an everyday setting when I'm meeting other youth, when I'm meeting my fellow peers, I would say in some ways I don't see too much of a difference because I've already done that and kind of like um I would say my interactions with my friends are very much so like in the in the experience of Yolanda King rather than or my friends won't be like, oh, like, this is like MLK's granddaughter or whatnot. And I guess they kind of know, but I think that's what I really like about the friends that I've chosen is that they don't necessarily, not that it's not brought up, but that they don't just see me for that or that, and that they see me as my own person. And so, and I like to keep that up. And I, I know because even my parents have told me that, yes, that is you being related to Martin Luther King Jr. is definitely something unique and just something absolutely wonderful and special. But not even that is what makes you Yolanda. People think that another notion is that, oh, that like I think I remind them how recent the civil rights movement is, especially like those who are my peers, because they're like, oh my gosh, like his granddaughter, Martin Luther King Jr.'s granddaughter, is our age. And I think that often we have like this sort of tendency to associate the events of the past, like, or the events of the 19th century in general, which I'm, or no, not 19th, 20th century. I make it older than it really is too. But, and that's my whole point that I think we have this like tendency to make it like further away or older than it really is. And I must admit, I'm kind of a victim of that. I'll kind of pick on my parents and be like, oh, so you were born in like the ancient times.
For many listeners, the word cotillion may call up images of fancy dresses and formal introductions, but in Black communities, it's always meant something a lot deeper. Here's how Yolanda explained it.
I think that the cotillion is a a significant landmark and milestone within the African American community and the United States. I know yesterday I was saying, and I've been telling my mom, and we've been talking, how every culture kind of has their big sort of special age or coming of age ceremony. Like, for instance, in the Jewish community, it's the bar mitzvahs, and in the Hispanic community, it's the quinceañera, and so on and so forth. And so I think that for us, the cotillion and that the debutante ball and being a debutante is our big sort of, I guess, coming of age and coming into society and coming into womanhood moment. And I think that is so, so important.
What Yolanda just described has roots going back further than most people realize. The first Black debutante ball recorded in American history took place in New York City in 1778, more than 100 years before the Civil War ended. They were called Ethiopian balls, and they were hosted by free Black men and their families. By 1895, New Orleans, home to one of the largest free Black populations in the country, held what is recognized as the first formal African American debutante ball. And here's what's most important to understand: these were not imitations of white society. Researchers at the California African American Museum have documented that where white cotillions were often about matchmaking, Black cotillions were always about education, scholarship, and uplift.
I realize that not everybody has the privilege of being, even like just within our community, has the privilege of being a debutante. And so what this has really taught me is I think that it should be something that should be even more accessible. I think that it's so important, especially being in a world which can be so difficult, I guess, being part of a oppressed group, that we understand and that we feel like empowered.
And Yolanda is right to make that connection between cotillions and empowerment. Historically, Black sororities, specifically Alpha Kappa Alpha, founded at Howard University in 1908, were among the first to formalize the debutante tradition in Black communities, specifically as a scholarship program. AKA's Alpha Theta Omega chapter in Raleigh, North Carolina, launched its debutante scholarship program in 1937. The goal was never just the ball, it was funding Black women's education. By the early 1900s, the number of Black women holding bachelor's degrees had grown from roughly 30 in 1890 to over 200, in part because of exactly these kinds of organizations.
And while, yes, at my school, there are kind of, because it is like still an international school, so there are people from all different cultures. And I think that that is just so important to also, have that unity and to have that kind of global citizenship. But then also, I feel like it was so important. And I didn't even realize like how important, how much I needed it until I joined the debutante of having that space of Black girl empowerment and Black girl magic um and so it just truly has just been something that will forever stay with me. Just not even, I'm sure that Cotillion itself will obviously be very beautiful, but then just like the preparation in and of itself has been so beautiful and has been so great. And I think I've found lifelong friends. So it's just kind of sad because I'm like, oh, I'm not going to see you every weekend anymore.
If you're enjoying this content, do me a big favor and subscribe to The Color Between the Lines. It's free and it helps YouTube recognize that other people enjoy this content and it needs to be shared among more people. Also, if you already have subscribed, please like and also share this with someone else so that other people can also share it as well. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the conversation.
Over the summer, I read my grandfather's Stride Toward Freedom book, his first book, and it's the closest thing we have to an autobiography. It's very kind of autobiographical and whatnot. And essentially, like, that book really breaks down his philosophy of nonviolence. And when I closed the book, because I thought beforehand, I understand nonviolence, like I understand, hate not being the answer, and that we must live in love and to love your neighbor and so on and so forth. However, it quite literally like chemically, like psychologically changed my definition of love and what nonviolence is. And I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, like if I had to come to this realization, like then imagine, like I can't imagine like what my like peers think, or the work that would need to be done like within my peers, because it came to I came to the conclusion that like we really don't understand nonviolence.
Bye.
We well, I think it's in part because it's not promoted in school. I don't think that a lot of people necessarily understand that, for instance, like love, like we are kind of told a one-sided definition, which is that love is I love you, you love me, so on and so forth. And that love is something that is romantic, and that you have to be attached, like that you have to have like some sort of like sentimental sort of connection with the person. So like friends, families, family members, romantic partners, so on and so forth. But love doesn't necessarily have to be something that is, oh, that you have to like the person and that you have to have like some sort of sentimental or even connection to them. It can just be like acknowledging their existence. And that's a completely different definition of love. And love is more like complicated than what we're told, which is like, oh yeah, I love you, and and like because you're my mom, and so on and forth. And while that love is so beautiful and also so important, I think that we forget that there are other types of loves. The Greeks had their different levels of love, and that it's something that is more complicated than the one sort of definition and the affectionate qualities that we associate it for. That's only one type of love. But this other love, I think, is something, it's almost spiritual. And it's, I think, this acknowledgement of our oneness and interconnectedness as humans. And I could go on and on, but like I really realized, I was like, wow, like my generation, it's not their fault. And nobody really, not a lot of people really know what exactly love is, and that we can only tell one definition of love and not this other love, which could help to combat a lot of the issues of our world. I mean, and even my grandfather said this in some way, that it would be absurd to, like, when he talked about love, like not the like sentimental love, because I think a lot of people think, oh, he had like some sort of like sentimental love for the racist and for the opposing side, and for Bull Connor and so on and so forth, and all these forces who fought against him. But that is not the case. It was just like an acknowledgement. And he even said that he was glad that the Bible didn't say to like your enemies, because he's like, there's some people who I simply cannot like. But then he and I cannot like the men who bombed my house,
Yeah.
for instance. And so he wasn't saying, oh, that you have to necessarily like everyone, but just don't also hate them. Because a lot of times we'll see, going back to the news, we'll see, oh, like a crisis happening, or someone getting murdered, and people losing lives, and these systems of oppression. And then people ask, or even just looking at the civil rights movement and the Jim Crow laws, and often I hear people ask, well, how could they do this? Like, how could you just treat someone like inhumanely? Like, how could all this happen? I just don't understand. And I'm like, it's because they had hatred. Like, the reason why people are able to, I guess, commit crimes, and people who are able to like murder or create these systems of mass oppression and just do things that are unthinkable, it is because they have hatred. Like, hatred enables people to do that. And so for me, after reading Strive Toward Freedom, I came to the conclusion I cannot have anything within me that will like enable me to do the unthinkable, and to do the same thing that those who I am fighting against are like doing.
You know, Gen Z is really dealing with a lot of stuff these days. You're
Yeah.
dealing with a lot of anxiety, social media pressure, trying to figure out what your future is. And what are you seeing among your peers right now? How are they feeling about the state of the world today and what they're dealing with?
Well, I think that a lot of us, we've gotten to the point where we have to just take a break. Unfortunately, while it is important to be well informed about the news and what is going around, I remember the other day my parents had on the news, and I was like, can we just turn this off, please? It's so much. It's so much. And it's almost a reflection of, I guess, like the way in which the past generations, and this seems so, I guess, pessimistic, but has in some ways disappointed us, and a result of people and those within the past, or those or the adults who haven't done their part. And so I guess that shows. But I know a lot of times, like, we just have to, like, my friends and I, like, I just, for me, I can't even like really read the news. Like, I have a, now, like, my tolerance has just been very, very low, because I'm like, okay, like, I just, at some point, it's the same issues that are worsening. And at some point, I just have to tune out. But then also about how a lot of people are saying no. A lot of Generation Z is saying, do not want to, we do not accept this. We do not want this within our world. And so I think that has also been something that has truly been motivating me, and moving me, and also I think the others within my generation. I think we kind of bounce off each other, which is kind of nice. But just to see that there are still so many people who are resisting to this, and who are not going to conform to this. And I know that a lot of times, even after I think especially after the past year, and seeing the results, and the turmoil we've gotten into politically, a lot of my friends and I've been like, okay, like, this is like the time to buckle down and study, and to get into fields such as law, and to become masters of these fields. And it in some ways motivated us to like be more studious, I suppose, because just to see like the direction that we're heading in, we're like, okay, like we have to make sure that the world is in good hands, because the current like trajectory that it's heading over, it's not. So it's now our responsibility. And so I think that for a lot of people, this has been an awakening call. I know that often recently the whole term woke has kind of been demonized, and some people kind of see it as a joke. But my question is, what else would I be doing? Sleeping? um, I mean, yes, I'm most definitely, I would say, and with pride, woke, because I do not want to be sleeping during such an important and crucial time. And I think that because of this turbulence that we're seeing, like some people tend to be more deeper sleepers. And so I think that this turbulence has kind of awakened them. And yes, it's especially for us who have been awake for a while now, can we see kind of how that can be frustrating. But I think for them, it took all that force and it took all that tug for them to really see what it is that is going on. My grandmother had a quote which says that essentially every generation has to earn their freedom. And so now, I mean, yes, I feel like I might be a little biased, but I think for some generations it might have been easier than others. And unfortunately for our generation, it's a difficult time for us, and it's a difficult time to earn freedom, I suppose. And so, but I think continuing to pass on this tradition, and to see now that it's our turn, and and how can we ensure that we are in a good place where we can pass the baton on to the next generation. Because now, as we, like the other day I saw something, I'm one of the younger Gen Z's, I would say, and often people mistake me for alpha. But even now, there's like two generations after us. There's like the alphas, and then also I think there's another one. I think they just created like another one. So now there's like generations, and they're waiting, and like the Gen Alpha, because a lot of them, especially like the older ones, like are like teenagers. So like there are generations lining up already.
Yolanda Renee King is a graduating senior headed to Columbia University in New York City, where she plans to study human rights. She is the only granddaughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. If this conversation made you think differently about nonviolence, about love, and what it means to carry a legacy while building your own identity, I encourage you to pick up the book she talked about. It's called Stride Toward Freedom, Dr. King's first book, published in 1958. It's the closest thing we have to his autobiography, and according to his granddaughter, it will change you. The link to a free educator's guide for the book is in the description below. And teachers, if you're using this episode in your classroom, subscribe to The Color Between the Lines on YouTube. That subscription is free, and the action helps this content reach more students. I'm Esther Dillard, and this is The Color Between the Lines.